federal judge under threat, a man murdered and a couple kidnapped, a remote snowbound village, the brutal and unforgiving Alaskan landscape, no backup for hundreds of miles, and as the temperatures drop, so do the bodies. The only thing colder than the stone-crossed night is the ice in US Marshal Arliss Cutter's veins. In this second installment of the Cutter series, former US Marshal Marc Cameron draws upon his years of running Alaska's fugitive task force and 2 decades of living in the land of the midnight sun to give readers an experience so authentic they will taste the caribou fat and need to put on extra layers to guard against the bone-rattling chill. So turn the page and begin the unforgettable journey to Stone Cross. All right. Well, I want to welcome Marc to the show again for his second appearance.
Hey. Cheers,
we only have Marc's on twice, apparently.
Yeah.
You and Marc Graney are
fresh off of a commercial
honor.
shoot.
This is awesome.
But so you got a new book coming out, Stone Cross, your second Arliss Cutter novel. Sorry, he's one of my favorite authors. He's subconscious.
He's awesome.
But I've already, and we've discussed it, fallen in love with this cast of characters.
Absolutely.
It's a great group of people. And I know comparing your novels is sometimes akin to comparing your own children, but do you feel like this protagonist in this world is closest to your heart?
Yeah, at this point in my life, I've published 21 books, and all of them are, have little bits and pieces of me. But I'd say that out of all those books, certainly not autobiographical, but Stone Cross has the most of me in it as far as my experiences and there's a particular fight scene in there that is pretty much move for move exactly what happened to me and a trooper when we were out in the bush. So I've used a lot of real stuff that happened, a lot of the just incredible, just the rich backdrop and the characters. I mean, the people that I've worked with and that are my friends still out in Western Alaska and Northwestern Alaska are really reflected, and their strength, I think, is hopefully reflected in this book.
Well, you could feel the love for subject matter in this book, and for lack of a better way of describing it,
Thank you.
both in the people and the land. Sure.
Thanks.
And so building off of Sean's question, so crafting lifelike characters is a must for any successful author. And in Arliss Cutter, you've created one who's genuine and authentic. And as I flipped through the pages, I felt an undeniable connection to Arliss, as if he was someone I've actually worked with in my previous life as a Secret Service agent. My question is, what steps do you take to make such a believable character? Do you write reams of backstory, or do you envision the character's physical traits first?
I kind of cast in my mind, not necessarily with I start with people that I really know. Start with folks. I had my first partner in the Marshal Service he was not a very tall guy, pretty strong. He incredibly strong-willed and didn't smile a great deal. When he spoke, it was almost in one of those Clint Eastwood "get off my lawn" whispers, like Mark, go check the mail kind of thing. Right. But what a great guy, and what a great person to learn from. I was 29 when I started with the US Marshals. I had a background in law enforcement already, but I was still very young. And so I base Arliss on him and other people that I've met. And I'm from the South. I have many of the things that qualities that I give Arliss are qualities that I have myself, although not as cool. I'm not a big smiler. I'm just not that way, and I'm happy inside, but I don't. It just looks creepy when I grin too hard.
You just can't see it under the beard.
I don't like this.
Beard.
It's here.
Yeah.
So I remember when I was, I don't know, my daughter couldn't say her R's very well when she was young, and one of her friends, and she was in the second grade or first or second grade, and one of her friends says, "Man, your dad is mean." And she said, "No, he's not mean. He's just harsh." And so I guess I'm just harsh. Just harsh. Just looks harsh. I just looked harsh. So I think I know these characters. I mean, I like to think that I know and get to know over the course of each book. I know the characters better and better, but I feel like I know these characters because I worked for so long in the Marshal Service. You know what it's like working in the Secret Service, or really anybody. If you pay attention, there's villains everywhere and really good heroic folks everywhere too. And so I've really taken note of those people and rolled them up into these characters, I hope, and made them so that everybody, doesn't matter if you're a deputy marshal or a Secret Service agent or a doctor or nurse or whatever, you can identify with somebody that will basically, pick up a weaker person and put them on their back and carry them to safety, either figuratively or literally.
Yeah.
Totally get it.
Absolutely.
So, Mark, in this story, Arliss is tasked with keeping a federal judge safe who refuses to have his protective services that are offered. So talking in your real life experiences and what you did as a marshal, did you ever have your hands tied like that, where someone refused what you were required to give, the protection? And if so, how do you overcome those limitations that are placed on you by the protectee?
That's a good question. Yes, and just like the book, we have workarounds. If somebody, the real problem is once there's a threat, and I think I even mentioned this in the book, once there's a threat and we do begin to protect someone, then it doesn't matter if they cut themselves on a butcher knife. It becomes, we get blamed for it. If they're under our protection, this from in the Secret Service. So we're very careful about who we do go up on. But once there's a bona fide threat, we will, a chief or a senior inspector will at some point say, well, just go be in the area. There's times when a Supreme Court justice, for instance, doesn't want to have you nearby. They don't want you in sight or sound. But they're in your area, and so you've got to be there in case, especially in a place like Alaska where there's bears and things like that. So I've gone as far, and I won't say which justice it was, but I've gone so far as to find out who was flying this particular justice out to fish, and then making sure the person had a shotgun and giving them a sat phone, and so they could communicate with us, and then we would just camp a short distance away so that we were able to respond. So we do workarounds, and we care about the people that we protect. We care about the institution and the people. I make the judge out in this one. You'll see when you read the book, but he's a person, and I've had judges that have gotten grouchy with me because protection went too long or whatever. But it's a people business, so we try to cajole our way in. And I've been to church with judges and been out to their cabins, and we try to stay. We oftentimes can't be as overt as the Secret Service, so we just try to be in the area and like here, just assign. I've had, when I was the chief here in Alaska, I would several times assign people to go on warrants, have a carry-in paper to go serve or whatever to be in the area. Just work around.
Periodically, I'm reading back some of my stuff, and I'm going through edits and whatnot, and it kind of catches me when I kind of disassociate myself as the writer and just kind of reading it. Sometimes I catch the word choices that I've subconsciously made, and it kind of points to missing the work that I used to do. And when I read Stone Cross, one of the things, whether you meant it or not, it almost felt like there's a bit of nostalgic feel to it. Were you sensing that when you were writing this?
Oh, if I were, if I'm to be honest, I miss being a deputy United States Marshal every day. I wrote a essay not too long ago, maybe a couple of years ago, called the second best job in the world, and being a novelist and being as arguably, you know, successful as I have been, even people would think, boy, that's a dream come true, but I already had my dream come true. I wanted to be a deputy marshal for years before I got the job, and it took me about 2.5 years to do it. And you know, there's mundane stuff about it, but particularly as a writer, I don't mind sitting in court and watching a bad guy, because I learn, and I get, you know, it's like thriller writer 101, transporting for taking somebody on a 200-mile sedan trip from Sherman, Texas to El Reno, Oklahoma, and chatting with him all the way. I'm like, all right, let me write this down. So I really enjoyed that job, and I am nostalgic about it even now. In fact, I have to bite my tongue when I'm around my son and his cohort, like if I go ride around, you know, with Anchorage police, because it's very easy for me to go, well, I remember when, you know, or back in the day
when I was your age,
we carried revolvers, you whippersnappers. And I, you know, and it makes it much nicer if they ask me a question than if I constantly pontificate on what it was like before there were cell phones and video cameras everywhere, and how we could, you know, you know.
Yeah.
So
not have to walk around the block.
Yeah, I miss it. I miss it. I miss the people. I miss the work. I miss being. So Arliss and Lola, and I mean, I'm still good friends with several of the deputies here, and then a bunch of us retired deputies are connected on social media, and sort of that way we can tell our stories back and forth to each other, you know. But yeah, no, I think you keyed it on I don't think I did that on purpose, for sure, but maybe it's because the people and the mission and all that is very important to me. And the Marshal Service, at least throughout my whole career, did a very bad job of tooting our own horn. We were, you know, when I hired on, there was a commercial on television, you know, Hertz and Avis and the big rental cars, and I think it was, I can't remember if it was Hertz or Avis. It was the second biggest one in the nation, and their advertisement was, "We're number 2, so we try harder."
All right.
And that was kind of our, you know, that was our thing. We were the Marshal Service. We're number 2 in the Justice Department, so we try harder. And you know, we used to joke, you know, we could accomplish more with an old pair of boots and a 10-year-old sedan and, you know, the will to go on than our sister agency could with 20,000 extra bodies.
That is the truth, Don Bentley.
Yeah. Don Bentley. But and I have friends in the FBI as well.
Sure.
Yeah.
Many,
of course.
many
They're all friends.
I think that passion, though, that you're talking about, and that it's not nostalgia. It's actually that yearning to still be a part of that. I think that's what kind of colored my question earlier and Chris's question earlier. Is just it comes out in this book. I mean, those characters, the reason they feel real is because you still have that very active.
It was beyond accuracy. It was beyond procedural accuracy. You just felt like you had a bit of a yearning to kind of, if you could just get back in the game one more time for just one more.
Yeah, well, I do. You do feel that way. You always like, you know, like, I don't know, like you want to be that person that they land the helicopter and say, "Come on, Arnold, only you can solve this." Commando, only you can solve this. Only you can track this bad guy. I want to be that old retired tracker that they come and say, "We got this really bad one. Can you come get him?" The cool thing about the Marshal Service is that our mandate is so broad, where, you know, our credential just says enforce federal law, and so anything that the DOJ, you know, anything the Attorney General says he or she wants us to do, we can go do. So it's not the stories that I put Arliss in that have to do with murder and mayhem and stuff like that is certainly not an everyday occurrence. But I've been asked to track murderers. I've been, I think we might even talked about it in the first interview. In the first book, Open Carry, the plot is completely different, but the setting, where I was asked to track that guy down in southeast Alaska that had chopped another guy's head off, that has nothing to do with Marshal Service duties and our normal course of duty day. Anything to do with a homicide. We're an enforcement organization, not an investigative organization. But I got to do it, and we help and we assist locals all the time, state and local. So it really allows me to write this kind of story. Allows me a lot of latitude, because I can, if he's, and especially in a place like Alaska where law enforcement is very, I mean, the village of Stone Cross is made up. It's a fictional village, but it's based on a couple of real villages where I worked along the Kuskokwim, and I've been stranded in these villages as they were. Fortunately, we didn't have all that terrible mayhem at the time when I was stranded there. I had a young deputy from, I can't remember if he was from Portland or from Seattle, but a bigger city, part of our Pacific Northwest Violent Offender Task Force, where the states, Alaska, Washington, and Oregon, work together to sort of, they'll borrow people from us, we borrow people from them. And we had a big roundup in Western Alaska by snow machine and airplane, and it was winter, so we didn't use boats, but we sent this young deputy out there to work with a trooper in far western Alaska, in one of the villages out on the Chukchi Sea. And when he got there, the trooper hadn't got there yet, and there was a village public safety officer, like there is in the uniform but unarmed security for the village, and they have arrest authority, but they're not armed. That was the only law enforcement in the village, and there was a double murder suicide. The lady had come over and found her husband, killed him and his girlfriend, and then shot herself. And this deputy's the only armed law enforcement, and this huge blizzard had blown in off the Chukchi Sea, or the Bering Sea, and whited out the village, and the troopers weren't able to get in. And he's on the phone, and he's very young, he's in his 20s, he's like, "Chief, what do I do? I'm stuck here with these 3 dead bodies, and there's no other law enforcement. I'm all by myself in this village of people I don't know." And I said, "Yeah, well, we'll
deal with it."
Yeah, deal with it. And so together, it's not like I had to give him this order, but together we decided with the troopers and him and me that he would just turn the heater off in the back in the room where the bodies were, and he would,
I was just gonna say that.
Refrigerator.
Dude,
yeah,
it's
wait
actually
till- and the troopers were 2 days till they got
Oh,
2
man.
days. Holy crud.
That's actually a perfect segue into my next question. When we had CJ Box on, we talked about the difficulty the wardens have in the U.S. states, the Western states, covering so much square mileage. And reading about the marshals, 1L, by the way, for those of you viewing, assigned to Alaska, as portrayed in this series, it seems like they face similar issues. So my question, though, is what does a guy like Arliss do to prepare for such varying circumstances when the landscape itself and the vast differences in people, population centers, the cultural norms, how much of that is training and how much of it is kind of fly by the seat of your pants learning?
There's training by district. I mean, we in Alaska trained our deputies different than a deputy in New York would train. And a deputy in New York would have a hard time here at the same way that a deputy here would have a hard time dropped off in the Bronx. So we have, we're kind of trained in the social aspects, and then we do a lot of rural survival training. For instance, our deputies, when I was the chief, and then the chief before me made sure she made her, the Jill Phillips character is kind of based on my chief and a couple of other ladies in law enforcement, senior inspectors with judicial security and that sort of thing. But my chief up here, when I first got to Alaska, she made sure that we were all outfitted, that we had a tracking team that was out at rurally. So there was a cadre of about 5 of us that were taught tracking, and when you learn about rural tracking, you're also learning about survival and being on your own and snow machines. And I mean, I sent the deputy out once when I don't think I was chief yet. The deputy went out to seize a boat in western Alaska, and he had all the gear from the winter gear from DC, the stuff that they issue us, which is like a Tuffy jacket. And,
Good luck.
You know, and this was in an area where it was Inupiaq Eskimo. So the Yupik out where I write about in this book, and then the Inupiaq are up further north, kind of cousins, if you will. And incidentally, they call themselves Eskimos here, where in Canada that would be more derogatory. But here they say I'm a Yupik Eskimo or a Inupiaq Eskimo. I think I even mentioned in the book, I call them what they call themselves. I'm very careful about that. So anyway, he went out there to seize this boat, and the local kind of looked at him and shook their head. You're gonna die here. Borrow my pants and borrow my parka. And so when he came back, I had just become chief, because he came back and told me that story, and I was able to petition our headquarters with our enforcement, and they bought us a ton of good gear. But I would say, just to finish off this question, I would say that a good part of it is just the people that come onto the Marshal Service have, generally speaking, that kind of cowboy attitude anyway. And, people that do Secret Service protection have one kind of attitude. People that do ATF have more of a militaristic attitude. You get into the type of work that generally suits your personality. And most of the people that at least came on with my generation, we watched Gunsmoke with our grandparents, and then Tommy Lee Jones, or True Grit, and then now that, the Raylan Givens kind of a personality, even though that's Hollywoodized and all that, that really holds true with the kind of swagger that it takes to go in, day out, arrest. We'd like to trot this out there, but the Marshal Service arrests more fugitives every year than all the other agencies combined, all the other federal agencies combined, because we focus on it. It's not because we're any better, but we focus on that particular thing. So in order to do that, we do draw in a group of young people that have that kind of a swagger, and that helps you. And then the people that come out of that group that come to Alaska generally are the type of people that know how to start a fire, that know how to take a boat out, that know how to survive if they're out for a couple of days.
Yeah, I can imagine them taking a kid out of the Bronx and send him down to Fletsy, get him trained up, and then send him to Anchorage.
Yeah, we've had a couple, and what's really we did a reality show. Sometimes just Google Alaska US Marshal reality. There's been a couple of reality shows up here, and one of the guys, he was brand new. He's from LA, film student. We've become great friends. He's half African American, half Japanese, and his mother actually helps me when I go to Japan with some of my research. But he came up here. He was never done any camping or anything like that. He's one of the lead producers on Life Below Zero now.
Wow.
Because he really, I remember taking him out on a survival training where we dug snow caves, and it wasn't super, super cold. I think it was like 17 below. So still,
that's cold.
Survivable when you're burying down in snow, but balmy 17 below. But he had his eyelashes were frozen shut, and we kind of got our stuff and helped him dig his snow cave. And he spent the night in a snow cave, and he has the kind of personality that, boy, it just clicked with him, and he's become an expert in his own right.
You know what that is? You know what that is, Mark? Mark, we would say it in the Secret Service. You just hire some of the best people. And people that are able to adapt and overcome what you would think would be limitations, and they excel.
Yep, very true. Very true.
Well, Mark, I didn't want to interrupt earlier, but I did want to say I was reading last night because we were able to get a copy, and I really thought Stone Cross was a real place the way you were writing it, and so I actually Googled last night and Stone Cross, Alaska, and your book kept coming up and coming up. And coming up. Like, where's the location? And then I realized
I will tell you, it is a real place. It's just not called Stone Cross.
Well,
I don't want the people there to be mad at me. So
I figured then, I said, well, he's based this on a real place because it really was a character in itself. So you really did a great job with that. Congrats.
Thanks. I appreciate it.
But, going back to the book, while looking for the killer, Arliss Cutler wonders if the local folklore of the hairy man might be a factor in what's going on with the murders and the disappearances and all that. So, in this very remote village, you've got this story that everyone's told for generations. So, how soon after you moved to Alaska did you start hearing your own first hairy man story?
Oh, there's so many stories up here. The hairy man, you hear about it. And when you hear about the hairy man, there's some things called Inukin. There's other names for them, but I can't remember the other name right off the bat. They're little people, like little, for lack of a better word, leprechaun.
I'm kind of a little person, but
these are little people. But these little people levitate and kind of float along the ground. They live under rocks in the tundra. There's a black wolf that lives out there. There's several. There's in fact, I might even mention it in this book. The long nails character, the scary lady with long finger and toenails that gallops on all fours, and some of these stories are made to, like this lady, long nails that has long fingers and toenails. Some about old people with long toenails that just terrifies me, but. She gallops on all fours and she has steel teeth and she eats kids that get out near the water. And so the parents tell their kids this, don't go in the tall grass near the beach or long nails will get you. And it keeps the kids close to home, oddly enough. So Hairy Man, though, is one of those Bigfoot stories that I've heard troopers tell me about, the hairy man. And generally it's the hairy man. Sometimes they'll call him hairy man. He, they say he who makes that bellowing howl or bellowing, I can't remember the word for it, but it's translates as he who makes that bellowing sound. But, when you're out there in the woods very long and you hear, I don't know if you've ever camped where there's close trees growing together, like birch when birch get cold, they bend over, and as they bend, they'll rub together. And then when the wind blows, they make this horrendous croaking, howling sound. And I could, you start to believe, there might be a hairy man out there. I was telling some story about the Inukin, the little short people, to one of the deputies that was visiting, and we were flying with the real life pilot and that one's based on, sort of, and we were flying across this big lake in Western Alaska. Western Alaska is just pockmarked with tundra and lakes and rivers and all that. It just in the summertime, you can hardly even look down there because it's just glistening with reflection of the sun. But water everywhere. You couldn't even walk on it. I mean, you have to take a boat or fly. So we're flying across this big open lake. It's probably 10 miles across, 15 miles across. And I mentioned to the deputy that's flying with us that, hey, this is kind of like the devil's triangle of this part of the area. Sometimes the compasses, they say, go bad, and this, they say it's haunted, and of this lake. And the pilot turned around to me and goes, and he was dead serious. He goes, stop talking about that while we're over this lake. And I said, okay. All right. And, they take it very seriously out there. And so now I do too. If I'm in a camp and somebody talks about the hairy man, I don't go, ha, ha. I go, oh, really? When did you see him? That's give me some more intel on the hairy man.
This is why I live in Northern Virginia.
Hey, you guys have your own version of the hairy man.
Real people.
Well, yeah. Well, I grew up in Jersey. And we had the Jersey Devil, and that that was a real thing.
Yeah.
But Mark, you anybody that knows you knows that you write some of your story, or even most of your story, longhand, and you grab out you write reams of stuff in paper. But what happens to those pages after you transfer those words to your computer? Do you trash them or do you treasure them?
I used to. I'm embarrassed to say that I used to keep them all in little like sheaves of notebooks and stuff in my office, and I was kind of like, I came to the understanding that nobody's ever going to have a museum of me, so I might as well. There will not ever be a Marc Cameron museum. So there's barely even a Hemingway museum, and look at them. I mean, we just went there last year, and it's nice, but it's not like they kept a bunch of his old manuscripts, and
all the cats.
So
kindling. Is it kindling?
Cats. Yeah, it's kindling. It's what I do try to do is I never throw away the notes or proofs until the book comes out, because I don't want it scanned and put online with crazy people nowadays. But mostly with the Clancy's. But I would say I write all the plotting and many of the kind of working out the chapters. So probably I'd say I write a third of the book longhand, and then the rest of it goes on the computer.
Just think if somebody had thought that way about the Dead Sea Scrolls, though, Mark. I mean, we wouldn't even know.
Well, and that's the thing. I used to sort of equate myself with that. This was, I've actually never thought my stuff was very brilliant. I still, like some other authors that you've interviewed, I'm just terrified that you guys are all going to come to your senses today at any moment and say,
Please,
what are we doing? Oh my goodness. We should burn the books that are actually printed, not just as notes.
Well, I'm almost out of toilet paper. I might need a handful of those if you could just send them to me. That'd be good.
That's right. That's one of my favorite rejection letter responses. And I can't remember who it was. It was Faulkner or one of those guys that was answering one of the New York reviewers, and he said, I sit in my bathroom with your review in front of me. Soon it will be behind me.
That's actually
that's a good one.
That's good.
All right. So early in the book, there was a couple of quotes that really caught me, and I'm going to read them because it's important. There's a quote attributed to Arliss's grandmother. And that really stood out. And she said, "Hate the sin, love the sinner." And then Grandpa's retort on that was, "I put the sin in jail. The sinner always hitches a ride." That sounds exactly what my grandmother and grandfather would have said. Was there family that reminded you of that phrase, or was that a cold-on, made-up thing?
I think that's me and my wife. I think she's way sweeter than I am, and I am more practical. And I just think that's our particular personalities. Often, if I was going to cast myself as anybody in the book, it would be Grumpy, not Arliss. In fact, when we used to watch Justified together, and my wife looked at me one day and said, "You realize that you're the chief in this. You're not Raylan." And I said, "Oh yeah,
but I want to be him."
Do you make grumpy cakes?
Yeah, I do. Well, I mean, I think that's probably much of the wisdom that Grumpy passes along has come from, my grandmother and my grandfather and my wife.
Yeah.
But hey, Mark, I want to level with you. I mean, being in law enforcement for as long as you were, and I've been in law enforcement for 20 years, either at the state or the federal level. At some point, you do become grumpy because every time you go out to work, you don't surround yourself with the best of people. I mean, your coworkers are the best people, but the people you're investigating or the people you're going to arrest are the worst of the people. And shit, yeah, that'll make you grumpy.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, it makes you. It can make you a bit jaded. And our youngest son is the police officer, and he's he's such a good kid. He's just well, I shouldn't say kid. He's almost 30. He's such a good young man.
He's your kid. You can call him a kid.
Yeah, he's
kid.
just. But I went on a ride along with him a couple of months ago, and he's just watching him around people. He's retained that goodness, but it's chipped away. You know, just life, like you said,
it does
chips away at it, and you just become more practical. You don't want to think that everybody's bad, but you certainly realize that everybody has the capacity.
Well, everybody could do bad.
Yeah.
Everybody could do bad.
Well, you come across as still pretty jovial. Chris is just an a-hole. I mean,
he's from Jersey.
100%.
Yeah, but I've been retired.
All Secret
for
Service
6
agents
years.
are, Mark.
Yeah, you know, I have many friends that were Secret Service agents. And,
It's who you
I feel
surround
sorry
yourself
for you.
with.
yeah,
sorry.
yeah. No, I think the farther you get away from retirement, the more you can sort of let your hair down, or if I had any hair, the more you can relax and see. I mean, there's a couple of people that I would never have been friends with at the knife shop, not that work there, but that go there, and gun stores and different places that if I was still with the Marshal Service, I would think, you know, those are felons. I can't really by policy associate with them. But
Right.
now I'm like, you know what? They're just good folks. I'm more as likely to count on them as I would anybody. Everybody can move on. But I also, I don't think I'll ever not be a bit jaded, because once you see a few things
Yeah.
that honestly we want to protect our loved ones from, we want to shield them from now on television you can watch Bones or whatever and see kinds of terrible decomp bodies and stuff.
Oh, yeah.
But I remember working a homicide when I was a very young detective and not showing my wife because the photographs were just awful. And now it's on television. But once you see it and smell it and taste the air around the bad things and see the bad guys and see how somebody can hurt kids, there's no coming back from that.
No.
And so you do, and I think I see, but at the same time, there are certain people. I'm firmly convinced that there are certain people that are, and I talk about this with Arliss quite a bit. He's kind of a sin eater. He can take that evil in and process it and deal with it and move on and take that burden off other people. And I think oftentimes that's what law enforcement does. They and first responders of all ilks do. They take that burden off and then move forward. That's part of the heroism of the gig.
Yeah, the unsung heroism.
The protection. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, Mark, you know how this works. You've survived the first portion of the crew review's interview.
Here comes the alcohol.
That's funny. That's funny. I think you guys survive. I'm the one. I'm just worried whenever we unconnect. You're like, man, that guy won't ever shut up.
No. Honestly, like
The beauty of editing.
honestly,
Shut me up.
I think all of our bucket list item is sitting around an Alaskan campfire, quietly listening to every story you want to tell us. Because
brother.
we're all
I
in.
would love to have you do a remote
Hey,
one up here.
we're up for
Working on
We
it.
are up for it.
As soon as the
Damn coronavirus is
quarantine
interfering
and
with
we
our
can be within
plans.
6 feet. But no, it is a little shorter. Since this is your second appearance, we won't subject you to 5 lightning round questions, but we're still going to do it 2 apiece.
Okay.
Here we go.
And I'm going to start.
Ready.
So, like Ned Jasper, you have taken a job as a VPSO, and that's a Village Public Safety Officer for those of you at home.
Mhm.
Which of your family or friends are you most likely to arrest? And will you use the taser or the stick?
Oh, well, I would say the taser, and I'm not saying.
Still want them over for Thanksgiving. Yeah.
Is Lola standing there with her arms across her chest going,
That's a great answer.
issue you a
That's
taser?
right. Exactly.
I bet I could have written down your answer verbatim because I knew you weren't going to tell me who. Okay,
Smart
so
man.
my second question is, I'm looking for a business partner. I have this great venture. It's called Caribou Eye Fat Ice Cream.
Mm.
Win.
not coronavirus.
That's all right. We're virtual, so we can't get it.
All right. You never know.
Clean my screen.
Tell our audience a little bit about the Caribou Eye Fat? Because that's a really interesting thing.
It's a real
So there's two things. There's the fat that's made into ice cream, and then there's the caribou eye fat that's it's just the fat behind the eye of the caribou, and it's really kind of elastic but full of energy, and it tastes just like bread dough. It looks like bread dough. It has the consistency of bread dough, and it tastes like, especially if the caribou is fresh, it's warm like bread dough. But,
and it warms you from the inside out? Or what?
well, it's just like any oil. If you were to go in your kitchen right now and take a couple of teaspoons of Wesson oil, you'd get warm. It's just a lot of calories. And so when you're out in the bush and you need something, the people that live out there all the time, they don't trim the fat off their food. They eat as much as they can. And so it's not uncommon to have I remember being in a house of a lady who sort of, one of the characters is based on her, and she had made caribou stew, and they take the leg bones and cut them up into pieces. But the leg bones are tapered, and so but they're full of marrow. She came around to my bowl and my partner's bowl, who's a trooper, and she blew the marrow out into our soup. Definitely not social distancing.
I was going to say,
that wouldn't play today.
It was a great honor. It was very cool. She wouldn't let us pour our own seal oil because it's got a very strong odor. So she wanted to make sure it went in the little saucer. And then there was bits of dried fish that are still very oily. And you dip that dried fish in the seal oil and eat it for that heat. And it does, it warms you up. So the caribou eye fat.
I am such a city boy.
So I have a business partner.
I would bet you that you'd be a lot more likely to eat caribou eye fat than you would the caribou ice cream, the Eskimo ice cream. I mean, it's really kind of a unique. In fact, there's a show on called Meat Eater.
Yeah,
Steve Rennell. He talks about it on there.
Is it an acquired taste, or like the first time out, you're like, yeah, it's pretty good?
Yeah, exactly. If you just make some yeast roll dough, and that's what it looks like, that's what it tastes like.
It just seems like that was like between two Eskimos thousands of years ago, and one of them lost a bet, and they said, "All right, now you got to eat it.
You got to eat that."
You can put just about every food that we eat into that category of
like
try this first.
Cheese or an olive or exactly.
Tomatoes.
But you think about it, when you're out there eating a diet of nothing but meat, then you think, you know what? Let's try this eye thing. Let's try this.
Jesus.
It's up here in Alaska when you're salmon fishing. It's sort of something you tell your kids. You got to bite the eye off. You got to suck the eye out of that salmon at some point.
Absolutely.
It's going to give us good luck. And
it wasn't sock eye; it was suck eye. And it just...
Exactly. It comes out on a little stem, and then you just bite it off. And
I pray I never have to tell my son that, Mark.
Oh, you will. You come up
when you take him up to Alaska to see Uncle Mark. You bet you will.
Well, then I would.
Exactly.
Right,
so Mark, let me ask you. Let me ask you. Do you have any grumpy man rules?
Yeah.
Oh,
Can you give us one?
Oh, I think I just got a email 4 days ago from one of my. I've been a scout leader for years, since my boys were in scouts, and
Mhm.
because I passed the background, they had me continue to do it for a while. Afterwards, I had
The only guy up there.
I had a young man he's probably in his mid-20s now, early 20s, and he sent me a Facebook message, and he said, "I just wanted to tell you," and he was very quiet when he was one of my scouts. He hardly ever spoke at all, but he sent me a Facebook message just the other day, and he said, "I just want to tell you that I will never forget that you told me to stand up when women come in the room, to always stand when a man shakes your hand, and to tip your hat at the ladies and say, honestly, how's your day?" And he said, "I just want to say that as a kid in my 20s, when you ask a girl how her day's gone, it makes a big difference." And I really appreciate. And then the whole email was like, "What a great pickup line you gave me." I was like, "Cool, you heard something." So,
That's awesome.
It's a pretty good grumpy man rule.
Yeah, that's a good grumpy man rule.
I mean, I still stand when another man shakes my hand.
You should
Stand up and look him in the eye.
Exactly.
And no, don't give him a dead fish.
Yeah.
No. Shake hands. Absolutely. Or
Definitely don't do
bump
that.
elbows. Whatever.
Well, yeah. Now you have to bump. Yeah, definitely bump elbow. It's ridiculous. Anyway, so my next question is: Arliss Cutter thinks Alaska's great, but he misses the warm water beaches of Florida. Where or what does Marc Cameron miss?
Rarotonga.
Yeah.
There you go, brother.
I just miss. I'd probably live half. I don't think I'd live half and half, because I like the seasons here as well, but I do miss the Pacific, the South Pacific.
Yeah. Good to see that.
For
I
our
want to
viewers
go there
at home,
because
go to
you've been
Mark's
there.
Facebook page and see pictures of paradise.
I know, dude.
Absolutely.
In fact, one of the pictures of you writing longhand in it's Maury, right? Where I use that as one of our photos for your show.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
Because it just looks so inviting. Looks awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is. It's beautiful. And that's the thing. I always worry, especially in this time we're in now, that it can be kind of tone deaf when everybody's hurting, to say, "Oh, look at me in this Polynesian paradise as a rich guy." We're not rich,
No.
I mean, you guys know from writers that
Sure.
we certainly do okay, but I used to think when I had my book on a shelf in the airport that I'd
Millions.
have all kinds of
Millions.
billions. But it's impossible to. I mean, we live in a house with no air conditioning, and we have to filter the water, and it's a great place, but it's impossible to show it without it making look like what it is, and that's paradise. I never want to make it sound worse than it is, but my goodness, I have a bunch of pictures that usually when I get home I post, but I just don't want to. It's too. It's like
too good
bragging
for right
about
now.
my really smart kids. Like, I don't want everybody to think, just shut up,
No, listen, I'll take those pictures. You could post those pictures.
Send them
I'll
to us
take those.
directly. We're good.
slowly but surely.
And I never apologize for bragging about my kids. So you're
No. But I will tell you, my wife's been to Moria, but that was before we were actually together. And so, but by seeing your pictures makes me want to go even more.
Yeah, well, Morea is actually in Tahiti. We're in Rarotonga, which is in between Tahiti and Fiji, but it's all those islands.
It's all that, yeah.
Same.
Yeah.
It's different countries, but the same group of a lot of Tahitians in Rarotonga.
It's pretty cool.
So,
Yeah,
Mark, what is the scariest ghost story you've ever heard around an Alaskan campfire?
I'd say probably sitting in a cabin with a fire going with a fellow trooper and a VPSO, and having these two men who I really trust and been in situations with tell me in all sincerity about their interactions with the little people. telling them, and I mean, and I'm like, come on. And they're like, no, seriously.
Really?
When you're out here.
They're real.
And honestly, oh yeah. And
Is that booze? Is that booze talking?
Mushroom?
No. M&Ms. We were all sitting eating. I carry a big like gallon bag full of nuts and dark chocolate M&Ms and stuff when I'm on a snow machine. And we'd been out there, and it was very cold outside, and the fire was popping, and it was just 3 of us. And they just started, and it wasn't rehearsed. I mean, the VPSO was already there. We were at his. I don't think we were on a snow machine. I think we had just taken a 4-wheeler over. But it wasn't rehearsed. It was like, oh, let's get together and scare the white guy. It was. They believed in it so fervently, and one of them, the trooper, and I are still very close friends, and we keep in touch. I've spoken with him as recently as a couple of days ago. And so when you hear that kind of fervent belief, and you're out in the middle of the, on the tundra, and we're along the river system, but yeah, it gets pretty spooky. So when everybody goes to sleep and you're all sleeping in basically the same room on mattresses on the floor with the glow of the fire, and you're hearing the wind outside, and yeah, it all seems way more believable than it does now.
I think that bag came
like
from
this,
one of your
Mark?
perps.
Eyes open, sleeping.
Sleep with your eyes open.
Exactly.
So my second question, back to your Marshal days. So a fugitive pulls a hidden knife on you, and I hate to tell you this, but he's gonna stab you. He's gonna get you. But I'll give you a choice. You want the blade in your thigh, or you want it in your bicep?
What?
That's exactly.
I'm gonna stab you for asking that question.
That's option 3, actually. So that didn't get to say that.
I think
You won't hear any
obviously
argument from us.
the thigh is a bigger muscle, but it's got the
Miss the
femoral
artery.
artery running out there, and
Right.
I don't and the peroneal nerve.
You thought about the little people and the hairy man, but not this one.
Oh no, I think about getting stabbed all the time. But
Yeah.
the thing is, when you really get stabbed, you don't ever know you're getting stabbed. If it's
You don't even feel it at first.
you think you're getting punched. Yeah, I would say thigh, because I want to have my arms free to kick his tail.
Choke the life out of him after doing it.
Yeah.
All right.
It's
Let's move
very
on.
Or
important.
get to my gun to shoot him.
It's very important at this point that I tell you that Eric wrote that question without any help from the rest of us.
I'm disappointed in all of you.
No.
No, good.
Made it through the censors, I got to tell you.
Any question? All right, that was your first question?
No, that's his.
No, I'm done.
He's done.
Okay.
Done.
You are indeed.
Mike,
All right.
save us.
Okay, so my first question really isn't a question. It's more of a request. We want to see your best haka.
Negative. No.
Come on, you just got back.
No, I will not be a haka.
Nope. Damn it. All right, not enough booze.
That whole wide-eyed pointing, that's pretty scary. It's pretty scary.
It is pretty intimidating.
All right,
Then another question.
My only question is this: is as a comedian, would Arliss be more like George Carlin or Steve Wright?
I'm going to start taking.
I'm going to say the thigh.
My question wasn't that bad after all.
George Carlin.
Yeah, without a
Arliss,
doubt. Come on.
Yeah, George Carlin. That's good.
All right.
That's a thoughtful question right there.
It took me a while.
I
I'm
love
done.
Steve Wright. I got to admit.
George Carlin's pretty good, though.
Yeah,
Come on.
Best.
Well,
That's
You
it.
guys are great. You guys
Mark,
are
once
great.
again, questions you probably didn't expect to answer this morning when you woke up.
Welcome to the Crew Reviews.
Once
You guys
again,
are-
thanks
you guys are
for
awesome.
coming on our show. We could listen to you all day. I promise.
Absolutely.
Want to thank Marc Cameron for coming on the show tonight, or Uncle Mark, as I like to call him, and talking about Stone Cross, the latest in the Arliss Cutter series. If you haven't bought this book or the first book, Open Carry, get out and buy it. Or as my friend from Jersey would say,
do it.
Do it. Join us every Monday on the Crew Reviews for a fantastic author interview with fantastic authors. We'll see you next time. Boys, raise a glass.
Here it is.
All day long.
All day long.
Awesome job.
Show, boys. This is show number 2. Marc Cameron and Stone Cross. And this is his young nephew. Young.
Oh, it's me, isn't it?
3, 2.
I'm sitting here waiting for you to do a thing.
No, it's you. You bet. You're spotlighted.
That's hilarious. That's hilarious.
It's your Uncle Mark. You
This is Sean Cameron talking about Uncle Mark.
All right.
And his second show in 3, 2, yeah.
Just get out there and buy this book.
Do it.
Do it, as Chris says, or do it.
Do it.
Do it.
Twitter. Facebook.
Twitter. No, I was like,
YouTube.
no, honestly, I was fine. It was like the stuff you were spouting in the background threw me.
We
All right.
screwed you.
Arliss Cutter, not Arliss Howard.
Arliss Howard. What was that?
I love Arliss Howard. He's a great actor. I don't know.
It was great, but it's not who
right,
we were
let's try this
talking
again.
to.
He's like, I'm off this show. All right.
It's like,
Take
Ready?
10. Yeah.
yeah. 3, 2, go.
The new Arliss Cutter series. If you have not started the Arliss Cutter series, get out and buy Open Carry first. And I keep saying get out, so let's start over.
Do it.
Do it.
Yeah.
Do it.
Good. Want to thank Marc Cameron for coming on the show, or Uncle Mark, as I like to call him.
Yes.
We're talking about Stone Cross, his second in the Arliss Cutter series. Get out there and buy it.
Do it. Do it.
Chris, thank you. The
Do
Jersey,
it.
do it. We.
So beautiful.
Oh my gosh! What do I want to say?
There's
I
Mark.
don't know. Whatever you want.
Have a drink.
All right. Take yeah.
Or 4.
Every time you do that, it cracks me up. Stop it.
Want to thank Mark? Wait, what?
What?
Do it.
So, I'll count me in. 3, 2, 1. Want to thank Marc Cameron for coming on the show tonight and talking about his Arliss Cutter series and his latest, not Open Carry. That's the first one. The second one is called Stone Cross.
No. Dun, dun, dun.
And the show slides into oblivion.
Just hit a wall.
I think the internet ran out of disk space for this one.
We are totally being throttled down by YouTube.
Let's try this without any thought of Twitter. Yeah.
Never.